Hello, friends. My name is Pat, and welcome to a brand new podcast called I Used to Think. This is a podcast about the stories of people who have changed the way they thought about a certain topic or issue because of an experience they've had in their life. These topics relate to relationships, money, religion, career, and even politics. This podcast is aimed for listeners in their early stages of adulthood who find themselves having to answer some of life's more complicated questions. Now, to be more specific, questions like, do I have to have a college education to be successful? I know for most young people, a college education seems like a given in order to get anywhere in life. You need that diploma on the wall in order to even get that first job. Other questions like, how do I take my parents' advice while still learning for myself? A lot of people find themselves encountering this question after they moved out, setting boundaries with parents. What does that look like? Is it even possible to balance those things? Other questions like, how much of my religious beliefs are a result of blind acceptance, and how much of them require some digging? That maybe the things I just believed growing up that I took for granted has some truth behind them, but it's a matter of really digging deeper and figuring out what I believed. And other questions like, how much money will actually make me happy? Is it possible to be happy with the amount of money I'm making right now, or only later on in life when I'm higher up in my company, or I'm running my own business, or I have passive income? What does being happy look like in relation to my income? These are things that I want to cover through this podcast, and I want to invite guests to come in to cover these topics, young, middle, older, from all walks of life, to explain what did they believe in the beginning and what experience caused them to change their mind about these things. Now, for me personally, I started this podcast because I've spent about the last year really rethinking the way that I see the world. And it came through experiences. I faced situations that I was terrified of. For those who know me personally, they know that I am terrified of roller coasters. It's the combination of the jerkiness and going quickly and going upside down. And this past summer, I rode a roller coaster. It was by far the scariest thing I've done so far in my life. And yet, through that experience, I learned not only that I would be physically fine after riding a roller coaster because you're strapped in and everything, but that the things that I fear might just be the things that I need to go towards in order to grow, not avoid. And I know I'm not alone in these things. When you begin to reach your late teens, through your 20s and your early 30s, you definitely do not think the same way you did when you were a kid. And even the year before, even a 25-year-old thought can think completely differently from the way they thought when they were 24. And it's not just me personally. I've had conversations with friends and peers, and they often start with the phrase, I used to think, but now I think, hence the title of the podcast. My goal is that people can listen to these stories, listen to the podcast, and think, wow, I'm not the only one, right? These experiences feel scary because these are foundations, especially religious, political. These are foundations that have been pretty solid or seemingly solid your entire life. And all of a sudden, it feels like everything's being broken down. But the hope is that these foundations are being broken down in order to be built back up, that something new and beautiful and even more solid than before can be put in its place. So I have a couple of other goals for this podcast in addition to being able to relate to these stories. The first is community. I want people to listen and then want to share their story or reach out to other people, other listeners who they can relate to, or reach out to me. I want a community to be able to be formed and for people to not feel like they're going through these transitions alone. The second is to feel comforted, which is related to the first one, but to feel comforted that if you're having doubts about something, if you're having tensions, deep internal tensions, you're not alone and there is a way out, which hopefully as I bring in older guests who are maybe later on in life in their career, they'll be able to bring those words of comfort. And the last one is to be challenged. With the pandemic, I know a lot of people are just coasting. They're coasting in their career, they're coasting spiritually, they're coasting relationally, and they feel like they just can't get out of this rut. I hope these stories will challenge you to climb out, to go experience something, to go ride a roller coaster, because somebody went through it and they're okay. If you yourself would like to share on this podcast, please do. Reach out to me. Let me know what's the story you want to tell. What did you used to think? And my goal, I hope this is clear, isn't to push a certain point of view. I could have guests on this podcast who are in complete opposite ends of the spectrum, but I want to generate curiosity, which honestly is a trait that is pretty hard to come by these days. I look forward to the rich conversations that await. Again, this is Patrick with the I Used to Think podcast. Peace.